Well, this is that 49 Epiphone Zephyr, and I got it to a certain point Saturday, and I was laid low Sunday and yesterday, and still recovering. A cold, flu, I'm not sure what. It's not the dreaded COVID, according to the Walgreens home test, but yeah, as you can hear, I don't sound 100%. I'm probably not thinking 100%, but I ran into some issues on this Zephyr. Number one, it was sounding pretty good, and then it developed a massive hum. It's got all these old capacitors on the inputs, and this thing uses what's called a grid leak bias for the first tube stage, at 5879. And if one of those caps goes out, then the bias goes out, and you get an awful hum. So it sounds real scary. I'm not going to subject you to it. It sounds like the world's trying to end. It's just a hum. And if I ground it out, downstream of those caps, it goes away. If I ground out upstream, it does not, which means that those capacitors are not passing AC negative, AC ground. They're just not working as designed. That's not a huge thing. Whoever recapped the rest of the amp just didn't do these. More on this in a little bit. The other issue with this amp, besides the 5879 being very microphonic and noisy, is I discovered that whoever had done the recap before, and I think there are two different services this amp had. I think quite a while ago that filter cap was changed out, and then later all the film caps were changed out. And I don't think that whoever did the film caps is responsible for the mistakes in the filter caps. But when doing the filter caps, I discovered that the previous guy had messed up. He'd had the center tap of the output transformer connected to the screen supply. He had the screens connected to the reservoir supply. He was driving the preamp voltages from the anode, the reservoir cap, rather than from the screen. Just a whole bunch of stuff was just backwards, and I got all that resolved. Now it's making sense. This amp has got three sections of filtering within that multi-section can cap, and it has two individual 10 microfarads on the terminal strips. In order to fit this cap into the 4-section holder, I got a 10, 30, 30, 30. And so I've got it 40 microfarad for the first stage and 30, 30 for the next two stages, and all is well there. The 5U4 rectifier tube that was in the amp was bad. I suspect when it had that terrible short condition that it damaged that tube. But I put in this other one that the owner provided, and all is well there. We are back in the, pardon me, I'm trying not to make disgusting noises on video. We're back in the 400 to 420 volt range now. And I've discovered what that adjustable resistor is for. It's so that a tech can adjust the bias of the amp. These are 6U6Gs, which are 19 watt tubes, opposed to the later 6L6 GCs, which are 30 watt tubes. So a cathode bias amp with these 6L6Gs, I can use that variable resistor to set the plate voltage so that the tubes are biasing correctly. And all that will work just fine, but I've got to replace that adjustable resistor because I broke it. I did not expect the wires, the exposed wires on the track part of that resistor to be so fragile. And as I was adjusting it and I was sliding the screw along it, I just broke a couple of those wires. So about 2/3 of that resistor is open. I've got the remaining third in use right now. I will, of course, I've already ordered the replacement that will be on my dime. I've also ordered the capacitors necessary to redo all this. So noisy 5879 preamp tube, noise from leaking capacitors here in this ancient stuff. Had a faulty 5U4, which is throwing everything else off. The faulty filter caps were also throwing everything else off. We are really close to being good. Until I change out these caps, you cannot hear that because it really is an unpleasant sound. One of the reasons I want to talk to the owner is this input circuit is just crazy, even for 1949. Basically, each series of inputs, whether these three or this one, goes to a volume control pot. In this case, there's a tone pot ahead of it, but your guitar with its tone pot and its volume pot goes in here to another volume pot, and in this case, a tone pot. So you've got a 500K or 250K pot in your guitar. Well, on this channel, it's a 1.3 meg pot. That's not too bad. On this one, it's a 68K, and that just rolls off all kinds of highs and just sucks a lot of the life out of it. And you can set this tone thing to be a little bit brighter, which will offset that, but it's really not a good sound. Basically, if you have these on 10 in the amp and you plug in and you roll the volume down on your guitar rather than rolling the volume off here, it does exactly the same thing as rolling off the volume here. I could disconnect these pots entirely from the circuit, the volumes, and let you just control it with your guitar. It would sound actually better than what it's doing in this. It's a crazy system. This tone circuit boosts highs and cuts lows, but it's doing it a very inefficient way. So between the 68K pot and this passive tone circuit, you're losing a lot. This kind of stuff is better done in a guitar. It would be much better if they just run the inputs to the amplifier and then done the volume and tone on a second stage, which is what you would find in almost any later amp. But, it's up to the owner whether he wants it to sound fantastic or whether he wants it to sound authentic, because you cannot have both in this amp. I'm glad to restore it to how it used to be. I'm also glad to say, oh, that was a dumb thing. Let's bypass that and keep all the good stuff, and then you got a much more usable sounding amp. And it's really just leaving a couple wires disconnected inside that could be put back in case some crazy collector ever wanted to have the authentic sucky sound of the stock circuit. But, I'll talk to the owner about that.